this is the tutorial for operation 2 for the part number 18866-1. So we just finished the first side. We're going to deselect that setup. Let's get our model set up. So we're going to first hide the instance of the vise that we're using now. We're going to make both the soft jaws and the other instance of the vise visible. This should already be set up. If you haven't, go back to the first video. And then we're going to proceed from here. All we're doing is decking this down and chamfering the outside edges. So let's go to setup. We're going to right click on it and we're going to make a new setup. Our what is model and what is fixture is going to change here. So for stock, we're just going to use from previous machining operation. Now obviously some of this material is already gone, but you can visualize where the top of the stock is from this image. We'll go back to setup, and our model orientation is going to be Z-axis plane and X-axis. We're going to select the top of our part. That gets Z pointing in the right direction. Then we're going to use something for the X-axis reference. So I would use something on the model. So this part of the hex, provided you drew it horizontal like you should have, or perhaps this edge on the model here. Okay, if it flips the arrow like it did for me, you need to check this box, flip it back. Now where is our origin? We're going to base the origin off our soft jaws origin, not the stock itself. So we're not using a stock box point, we're going to use a selected point. And we're going to zoom in and we're going to pick where our soft jaw says origin is, because that's how the soft jaw was machined. So it's this corner here. Okay? That's why we have the symbology here that X is the left corner that's been machined. Y is the front face, which should have been indicated in before the soft jaw was made and when you set it up. And Z is the top of surface that's been machined down of the soft jaw. We're trying to get this set up so that we have a standard setup for soft jaws. Now some places you'll want to have your origin maybe on a feature or something, but for this part and this setup, that's how we're doing it. Okay, now our model, we want to select our model, which is the part itself. Okay, I'm going to make sure that's documented. Make sure if this isn't open, open it up and pick the model itself. Okay. Now we're going to go to post processor. We're going to call this the last 5 digits of the part number, 4 digits of the part number. So it's 8661. That's operation 2. Op 2 of the wrench body. Work offset 1, and we'll hit OK. All we need is to deck this down and chamfer it. So we're going to do a face mill, and we're going to use from our aluminum library our face mill. And on the last one I bumped the speed up to 3000 so we get a little bit better finish than we've been getting. And then we're going to go to geometry. It takes the top of the part, should be where our stock was defined for the last operation. And we're going to go to heights, and we're going to go from stock top. This is going to be stock top. And then we're going to go to model top. That should be all good. We go to passes. We're going to put a pass extension of 2 inches instead of 1.5. I want to make sure we're clear of the part. The step over is fine. We're going to go both ways. We are going to do multiple depths this time, and the maximum step down is 40 thousandths. And we're going to do a finish step of 10. And we're going to use even step downs. No stock to leave. We'll go to linking tab. We're going to do everything but this vertical lead-in radius. And let's hit OK. So we should get several passes going back and forth to mill that down to the proper face. Again, this material around the outside is actually gone. It's just not rendering that way. If you did want to bring in a mesh of the stock, you should do that. I don't tend to do that, but that's preference. It's a little more effort. Okay, and then we're going to do the contour on the chamfer. So I would just copy the parameters that worked on the other side. So let's go to the chamfer mill. You right click on this, say copy, click on our other setup. We're going to paste. Of course, it needs to be regenerated. We're going to edit that regeneration. We'll leave all these settings at default. We'll go to geometry. We're going to clear all the selections out. We're going to pick the top edges of our hexes and then the top edge of our perimeter. We're going to go to the heights tab. And now we're going to go from model top instead of stock top. We're going to go to selected contours. We go to the passes. We're going to leave this alone, and we're going to have 0 for the chamfer width and 0 for the clearance. On the linking tab, we're going to leave this all the same as what we did last time, and we'll hit OK. All right, so that should be it. Only last thing is I forgot to have you go over here and change this to op2 so it's consistent with our program listing, and that'll pop up in the notes. This is the video tutorial to cut the soft jaws. I did these out of sequence for 2 reasons. One, not all classes will be assigned to cut soft jaws. Some of them will use ones that are already pre-cut. The other reason is I wanted op 1 and 2 to follow the same stock parameters. So we're going to program this out of sequence if you were actually running the soft jaws. So we have our setup. It's the same setup as operation 2, but we're going to change some parameters. So we're going to create a new setup, and this will only be run if you're making soft jaws. Is a new setup. Okay, and what is our part in our stock is changing. So what we want to do is select as our model is the 2 soft jaw pieces. Okay, and then our origin is going to be z-axis plane and x-axis. So at this point we can hide the model for the moment, and we're going to select the top of the first soft jaw, and our origin is going to be selected point again, and we're going to pick the corner that we're using as our origin on the soft jaw. That way it's all machined within one instance, same cutters, and hopefully it's accurate. Okay, now let's go to our stock tab. And we're not going to do this from previous operation. We're going to do relative size box. And we're going to add stock to all sides. On all of our parameters, we're going to leave them at 0 except for the height. On our stock Z, positive offset, we're going to put 0.01, 10 thousandths. We want to skim off the top of the jaw to make sure it's accurate. Let's go to the post-processor tab, and we're going to call this the last 4 digits of the part number, which is 8661, but we're going to call it 0. So this is a 0 operation. It's for fixtures. Op 0. Soft jaws. That way we know that's what that's for. And we're going to use work coordinate system 1. Let's hit OK. And if we zoom way in, you should see that there's a little bit of material above the part, and that's what's going to be removed. Now we're going to machine this step in the left side of the part. So when these jaws are taken in and out of the vise, we can line those up after it's been machined with either a parallel or 1, 2, 3 block and align them when we bolt it together. You notice there's space in between. The part we have is relatively big, and we want to have space in between so that we don't go past a full circle on our part. Okay, and we're not clamping beyond tangency point. We also want to be able to have some room that when we clamp this together that it's putting pressure on the part. So what we're going to do is we're going to clamp a 1/2 inch parallel in between these before we run this program. Let's call this top 0. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the same cutter to cut the top and the sides. That way all of this is cut with the same cutter and we have same accuracy level. What we're going to do is we're going to first do a face mill, and we're going to select the 1/2 inch end mill. To do that work. I know we use the face mill a lot. I'm very afraid of us cutting the tops of these jaws with a big 3-inch diameter cutter so close to the vise. So it also, it really isn't removing that much material, and then we can cut this side feature with the same cutter and have less tools. Okay, so we're going to skip the multi-axis tab. We're going to go to geometry. We're going to accept what's there. In our heights tab, we're going to go from stock top to stock to model top for our machining. That should be correct. It's only taken 10 thousandths off. On passes, we're going to leave all this at default except for the pass extensions. We're going to go 0.5. I want extra room. We're approaching the vise. We want to make sure that it's coming in and you can stop it if you need to. Our stock offset's going to be 0. Our step over, 350 thousandths is probably fine for a 1/2 inch end mill, so we'll leave that alone. We're going to leave all of these others at default. We're not doing multiple depths. And then we're going to go to the linking tab. We're going to keep the tool down, make sure that's checked. And then we're going to get rid of our vertical lead-in radius. And the rest will take at default. And it should machine across both jaws, as you see here. Now we're going to cut this side edge. So we're going to do a 2D contour, and we're going to select just the back line. We're going to use this 1/2 inch end mill that we used in the last operation. Now they've moved this. Hopefully they don't move it again. But there used to be a box that said tangential extension, where you can take a line and extend it and it cuts farther. So if we've assembled this correctly, this line and this line should be in line with each other. If we select both of these edges, it's going to try to do lead-ins in between. So if we right click on the geometry selected and we hit the edit button, these tabs that used to be on here appear. So we're going to do an extension. It's going to be tangent to our current cut. We're going to go by distance, and our start extension, we're going to leave that at 0. It's just going to start where it starts. But our end extension, we want it to go the 1/2 inch gap plus the inch of the second jaw. So we're going to put in 1.5, and that'll extend our cut beyond where this edge is. We're going to hit OK. And that is independent to any lead-ins and lead-outs you put in. Under passes, we're going to go from stock top, that's fine, and we're going to go to our selected contour. Go to the next tab, passes. We're going to put in wear compensation. And then we're going to do, this is a critical feature, we want this nice and clean. So we're going to roll down and we're going to go to roughing passes. Our maximum step over, since we're only doing one, doesn't really matter. So we'll leave that at default. And then multiple depths, we're going to go 1/4 inch depth of cut, that's about half the diameter, and we're going to do one finishing step down at the bottom, which will act as a spring pass, and we're going to leave 10/1000ths for that to do. We're going to finish at final depth, we're going to rough the final, and we don't have to worry about islands, those don't matter. Now we need to scroll back up to our finishing step over, it's going to be 0.02. Okay. Now we're going to go to the linking tab. Make sure keep tool down is selected. Lead in entry. We're going to do no horizontal lead in entry. We're going to come in at a sweep angle of 0. We're going to come in off the part. And our linear lead in distance needs to be more than half the diameter of the cutter if we're coming straight in. So we're going to call that 0.26. Okay. We're not doing perpendicular. We're not doing a vertical lead in radius. So let's set that at 0. And that should be good. Let's hit OK. So we should be leading in. We do 2 rough cuts and a finish cut. You need to watch this. This model of this vise might be different than what we have in the lab. We have more than one brand. You need to watch this, okay? It's the letters that are going to be in the top of the jaw. And there's 2 commands you can use. Now, I've used a single line font here to try to save room. If you use a full lettered font that has an outside profile, the engrave tool does a really good job. For this type of engraving, we need to use the trace command. So we're going to go to trace. We're going to select from our aluminum library the 3/8 chamfer mill. So hit select. Okay, and what trace does is goes right on center line, and it will follow different levels in Z, even though all our stuff's in the Z1 plane. Okay. And so we're going to keep these default settings. We're going to skip the multi-axis tab, and now we're going to select our geometry. One thing nice about the way you can do this if you have this set up correctly is you can actually select an entire sketch. So let's expand the soft jaw models, and let's expand the 2 sketch folders. Okay? And the very last one that's visible is the green text you see for each respective file. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go from select, and we're going to pick this down arrow, and we're going to pick sketch profiles, and it gives you different options here. I'm going to hover over this so you can see it. It'll do all loops, including the outside of the plane that you're selecting. You can do just the outer loops, or you can do inner loops. So we don't want to cut the outside edges of these jaws. We just want the engraving. So we're going to select the inner loop option, and then we're going to pick sketch 1, sketch from the jaw 1, and it looks like it highlighted everything. And then we're going to get the sketch for number 2. Okay, and that should get everything in that one. Now we're going to hit OK. And if we see that there's an area that didn't get machined, like this triangle here, we may have to select that individually. Now the quickest way to tell is to make the 2 sketches invisible, and you'll see what's missing. Okay, so it looks like this triangle, for whatever reason, was interpreting as that is, well, there are settings of something not to cut. So I've now made the sketches visible again. I'm just going to select that missing piece of geometry. Hopefully yours goes as easy as that one did. Okay, we're going to go to the Heights tab. Now we're going to start at stock top. That's fine. We're going to go from a feed height of model top. And then, but our trace is actually negative. We want to go negative. And we're going to try 5,000. So we might have to go a little deeper. But we've milled this down with the same instance. The machine should be warm. All we need is a slight engraving on here. We don't need anything too aggressive. So hopefully that'll work. Otherwise, we'll have to adjust that tool at the machine. You do want to check to make sure your engraving bit is absolutely sharp. If it has a broken tip, we're going to have issues. Okay, so we're going to go to passes. We're going to leave all of this at default. You notice this is not compensating to the right or left. It's going right on the center line. We don't need to chamfer anything, so we're going to leave that blank. And we don't need multiple depths. And then we're going to go to the trace linking tab. And the only thing I would select is keep tool down. We don't want lead ins and lead outs, that would just gouge our part. Let's hit OK. And it should have machined everything. So again, you can double check by making the sketches invisible, and you should be able to see your text highlighted in blue. Okay, so now we can collapse these things down, and we're done with the engraving bit. All right, last operations that actually cut the pocket and the soft jaw. So to do this, we need to make the model part 188661. We need to make that visible. We're going to use geometry on it to machine the pocket that meets the outside profile. So what we do is we're going to do a 2D pocket. Okay, so we're going to use our pocket tool, and then we're going to select our 1/2 inch end mill. Alright, so we're going to go to the geometry tab, and we're going to select the outside perimeter of the part. The arrow is on the outside of our profile. We actually want to toggle that to the inside for this. That way we're cutting a pocket. Now again, you don't want your real part in here when you do this. It would machine it away. And so make sure the arrow's on the inside. We're going to go to the Heights tab. We're going to start at, and remember, everything in reference here is actually to the jaws, not what I've just selected. So we're going to start at our retract being model top, and our depth is not to the selected contours because I picked the top of the part. We're going to go to selection, and then we're going to rotate up, and we're going to select the bottom of the part that's going in the soft jaw, and that'll give us our depth. Okay, we're going to go to passes. Our maximum step over of 300 thousandths is fine. Check the morph spiral option. It'll be a little bit more efficient machining. And then we're going to go to multiple depths. Okay, we're taking off 400 thousandths in height, so our maximum step down is going to be 1/4 of an inch. So it'll be half the diameter of the cutter. We're going to do one finishing step down, and we're going to leave 10 thousandths for that cutter to remove. We want to use even step downs. We're going to go in order by depth, just fine. You can leave that blank. And then we're going to deselect stock to leave. We're going to go to finishing passes, and we're going to set wear compensation. Smoothing deviation should be 4/10. We're going to do one finishing pass, and the step over is going to be 20 thousandths. We're going to do lead in on finishing passes. We're not going to repeat the finish pass, and now a box opened up here. We're going to do finish only at final depth. Okay, then we're going to go to the next tab, linking tab. Everything at default except for when we get down to this vertical lead in. We're going to set that at 0. Last thing we want to do is we want to change from helix to plunge. It's going to be plunging in the center where there's no material, so that should be fine. And we change our ramp clearance from 100 thousandths to 50 thousandths, so 0.05. Okay, and then we hit OK. And you can't actually see the toolpath right now because everything's rendered. If we hide the part, you can see the trace of where it's cutting. And this is kind of a shortcut. That way we're cutting this pocket exactly to the model we have. If we're actually to simulate this, we will see what happens here. So we highlight that. The gray area is where it's machining away. And if we do a simulation, it'll show the area we're milling out. Okay, so this is a method to make a soft jaw without having to model an accurate soft jaw and place your part within it. Okay, one last thing I overlooked is we're doing a face mill with a 1/2 inch end mill. We're doing the end cut with a 1/2 inch end mill. Then we switch to the chamfer mill to do the text. Then we switch back to the 1/2 inch end mill to do the pocket. Sequence wise, let's drag up the 2D pocket so that it happens before the trace. That also, we get all 3 of these operations done without a tool change. And then if we have some issues with the engraving, we can always just run the last piece of it to do the engraving piece if we need to lower or adjust the Z height. Okay, so again, you're going to need to submit 1, 2, 3 NC programs and 1, 2, 3 setup sheets. Make sure you're zoomed in so you can see what the setup is with the proper vise orientation. And this concludes the tutorial to machine this part.